In the golden age of gods and mortals, there lived a woman named Callista, born in a quiet village at the foot of Mount Helicon. She was no queen, no warrior, no priestess, but her beauty was unlike anything the world had seen. Her eyes mirrored the Aegean Sea, her voice was softer than a summer breeze, and her presence turned even the most hardened men into poets. One day, as she walked through the forest to gather wild herbs, she was unknowingly seen by two immortals. Apollo, god of the sun, and Ares, god of war. Apollo, watching from above, was mesmerized by her grace. Such beauty, he whispered to himself, she must be mine. I will shower her with light, with music, with eternal warmth. And so he descended in a golden chariot, cloaking the forest in radiant light. But Ares had seen her too. From the shadows of the trees, his warrior heart thundered with desire, not just of the flesh, but of conquest. No sun god will steal what I have claimed, he growled. She belongs to me, as glory belongs to the victor. Days passed, and both gods began to court Callista. Apollo brought her the most beautiful songs, sang with his golden lyre under olive trees, and painted her name across the evening sky with his setting sun. Ares, in contrast, brought her power. He taught her how to fight, how to wield a blade, and gifted her armor forged in the fires of Hephaestus. Callista was torn. One offered peace, the other passion. One offered beauty, the other strength. But the gods, impatient and proud, soon grew weary of waiting. Ares challenged Apollo. If you wish to claim her, then fight me for her, he roared. Apollo, though not a war god, accepted. The skies darkened. Thunder rolled across the mountains. Mortals fled as the earth trembled beneath divine rage. On the plains of Thespia, beneath a blood-red sky, the gods clashed. Apollo's arrows flew with blinding light, searing the battlefield. Ares struck with a fury unmatched, every blow shaking the ground. Trees burned, rivers boiled, and the heavens themselves wept. But just as Ares raised his final blow, a voice rang out, enough. It was Callista. With fearless steps, she walked between gods. I am not a prize to be won, she said. You are gods, and yet you act like children. If love must be earned by blood, then I want no part of it. She turned her back and walked a wine to legend. The gods stood in silence. For the first time, they felt defeat not by sword or flame, but by the will of a mortal woman. From that day on, neither Apollo nor Ares spoke of her again. But on some nights, when the wind is just right, you can hear the whisper of a woman's voice in the trees, reminding the world that even gods can be humbled by love. Callista left the battlefield behind, her steps light, but her heart heavy. She had turned away not only from two gods, but from the entire pantheon that had watched her like a hawk watches prey. The world felt colder, now more dangerous, yet somehow more hers. She wandered through forests, crossed rivers, and climbed the hills where no mortal dared go. Word of her act spread like wildfire. Villagers whispered her name with awe. Some called her foolish, others brave, a woman who had defied Olympus. But the gods were not done watching. Athena, goddess of wisdom, had observed everything. She admired Callista's courage, but more than that, her mind sharp, unyielding, and free. One evening, as Callista sat by a lonely stream, Athena appeared to her not in golden armor, but as a hooded stranger. You are wiser than most, she said. You saw through their vanity. But the world is not kind to those who walk alone. Let me teach you the ways of knowledge, so you may protect yourself, not just from gods, but from men. Callista agreed. Years passed, under Athena's guidance. She learned the ancient languages, the secrets of herbs, the laws of stars and spirits. She became a healer, a philosopher, and eventually a teacher. People journeyed for weeks just to speak with her, to hear her words. Some even claimed she could read fate itself. But fate, as always, is a jealous thing. One night, a shadow fell over her valley, a creature from the underworld, a fury, unleashed by Hades himself, slithered into the mortal realm, not by his will, but by a crack in the world caused during the gods' violent duel. The fury hunted Callista, blaming her for the imbalance. Its cry was like broken glass, its wings torn and burned. It came not for her life, but her soul. But Callista did not run armed only with her knowledge, her voice, and a dagger, blessed by Athena. She faced the fury alone under a stormlit sky. The battle was not one of strength, but of mind. She outwitted the beast, lured it into a trap formed by her own hands and ancient runes. When the creature lunged, she struck not to kill, but to bind, and she succeeded. The fury howled once more, then vanished in a burst of black smoke, sealed in the earth once again. From Olympus, the gods watched in silence. She has become something more, said Zeus. Not a goddess, not a mortal, something in between. And so Callista's name faded from temples, but lived forever in stories. Not as a prize, not as a lover, but as a legend, mortal, who rose above gods. Years passed, Callista's legend only grew. Kings sought her counsel, oracles whispered her name in dreams. Yet she remained untouched by time, while her village withered and rebuilt, while empires rose and fell. Callista stood unchanged. One moonless night, as the wind howled like 1,000 wolves, she awoke from a dream, no, a vision. A flame had burned within her chest. Not pain, not warmth. Power. The next day, as she stood before a mirror of still water, she saw her reflection shimmer, her eyes no longer mortal blue, but flickering gold. Callista was becoming something else. Athena appeared once more. This time not alone, but beside her stood Hecate, the goddess of magic and crossroads. You carry a spark, said Hecate, her voice like smoke, a gift not given, but born through will. No mortal should possess it, yet you do. Your soul has touched the realm of gods, Athena added. You now stand before a choice. Callista remained silent. You may remain as you are, said Hecate, forever wise, forever mortal, or step beyond, cross into the realm of flame and fate. Become a goddess, not of war, not of love, but of balance, the bridge between mortals and immortals. It was not temptation they offered, it was burden. Callista walked alone into the forest that night, as she had done so long ago. She listened to the wind, to the earth beneath her feet, and to her own heart beat steady, strong, human, and then she returned. I will not be a goddess, she said, not because I fear power, but because the world needs someone who chooses humanity. Hecate smiled faintly. Athena nodded once, and so Callista's body faded into legend, but her spirit remained. In every healer's touch, in every woman who speaks her truth, in every man who bows not to gods, but to wisdom. They say when a god stands too tall, or when pride blinds Olympus. A voice rises in the wind firm, gentle, mortal. Remember Callista. Centuries passed, temples crumbled, names faded into dust. But not hers. Callista's story lived on not as a myth carved in marble, but as a whisper in the minds of those who dared to think, to question, to resist. She became the symbol of choice, of mortal defiance, of quiet strength. In distant lands, women carried charms bearing her name. Soldiers etched her likeness onto their shields, not for war, but for balance. Scholars in Athens rewrote their philosophies, placing not gods at the center, but the will of humankind. And still, Olympus watched the gods, once adored, now found fewer temples, fewer prayers. The world was shifting. Faith was no longer blind. Zeus grew restless. Her name has become fire, he thundered, and fire spreads. She was one mortal, said Hera, yet she burned through eternity. One by one, the gods debated. Some argued to strike her memory down. Others feared doing so would only strengthen her legend. But Hades, quiet and brooding, finally spoke. She chose mortality. Let her rest, but if her spirit truly lives on, then perhaps the time of gods has passed. Let the age of will begin. In the mortal world, a storm rose across the Aegean coast. Fishermen reported strange lights over the mountains. Shepherds claimed to see a golden figure walking the hills at dusk, barefoot, with a crown not of gold, but of olive branches. They say it was her, not reborn, not divine, but eternal, Callista, keeper of balance, breaker of pride, child of no god, mother of all change. And in Olympus, on the highest throne, Zeus sat in silence, his hand curled into a fist. Then slowly it opened. For even the king of gods must one day bow to a woman who needed no crown. Millennia passed, the names of gods became poetry. Their temples, ruins, their statues, museum relics. The world change machines replaced myths. Stars were mapped not with prayers, but with science. Yet in quiet moments, in the stillness between heartbeats, her echo remained in a bustling city. Far from the old mountains of Greece, a young woman named Eleni sat alone in a library. She wasn't royalty, she wasn't a warrior, but she carried something ancient in her hunger for truth. A fire in her chest she couldn't explain. She had dreams. In them, she stood in a battlefield bathed in golden light. Two figures, one in flame, one in shadow, fought over her. But she did not run. She raised her voice and silenced the gods. Eleni didn't know why these dreams felt real. She only knew they gave her strength. One evening, as thunder cracked over the city skyline, Eleni stumbled upon an old book, its pages weathered, its words forgotten by time. The title read, "The Flame and the Will, the Legend of Callista." She read every word, and when she closed the book, something changed. She stood up not just with knowledge, but with purpose. The next day, Eleni spoke out against injustice in her school, then in her community, then her country. Her voice, like Callista's, was calm but unshakable. She didn't need weapons or gods. She only needed truth, and far above the clouds, in the realm few remember, the gods watched. "She lives," whispered Athena. "No," said Hecate, smiling. "In the wind that danced through the trees, in the courage of those who walk alone, in the silence that follows every brave word spoken, Callista lives, not in temples, not in shrines, but in every soul that dares to choose their own path. And so the gods faded into myth, but Callista became something more, a story, a spark, a flame that never dies. Long after the last god's name faded from memory, the world kept turning, filled with endless nights and dawning days. Mountains crumbled, rivers changed course, and civilizations rose only to fall again. But through it all, a single flame burned, hidden in the heart of humanity. It was the flame of Callista, not bound by divine will, not chained by fate or fear, but carried in the courage of every soul who dares to stand for what is right, in whispered legends told by firesides, in quiet acts of kindness unseen by crowds, in the restless dreams of those seeking more than what gods offer. Her spirit lives. For the gods may have fought, may have fallen, but the true power lies within the mortal heart, a heart that chooses, that loves, that defies. And as long as there is one voice rising against injustice, one hand extended to help another, one mind dreaming beyond the stars, Callista's flame will never die. It will burn eternal, a beacon for all who believe that the greatest power is the will to be free. Callista's flame did not simply burn and fade, it became a river flowing through time, winding and endless, across ages and empires. Through wars and peace, her spirit whispered in the ears of poets, kings, rebels, and dreamers. Sometimes she walked beside a lonely traveler on a moonlit road. Other times she danced in the flames of a campfire in forgotten lands. She is the breath of the wind that stirs the ancient olive trees, the quiet strength that stirs beneath every heart that dares to choose freedom. When empires crumble, she rebuilds. When darkness rises, she is the spark that ignites hope. And even now, in the world you know, her story is alive in every struggle, in every victory, in every love born under the endless sky. Because Callista is not bound by time or space. She is the eternal flame of choice, courage, and change. And as long as there are those who dream, who fight, who believe, the story goes on forever. Long before the cities of men rose from the earth, before the gods claimed Olympus as their throne, there was only the wild, endless forests, endless skies, and the pulse of the earth itself. Into this untamed world was born Callista, not mortal, not immortal, but something in between, a spark of defiance caught between the hands of fate. Her story began when the first gods noticed a flicker in the darker light that neither Apollo's sun nor Hades' shadows could reach. They called it the first flame, and where this flame touched, life changed. The forests bloomed with colors unseen. The winds carried songs that echoed through time. But most of all, in the hearts of mortals, a fire awakened, the fire of choice. Centuries passed. Callista's flame was carried in the footsteps of wanderers and exiles in the deserts of Egypt. A lone woman saw the flame in her dreams and carved it into stone hieroglyphs, the first written stories of courage and will in the frozen tundra of the north. A shaman's daughter danced around a fire, her voice calling to the flame for protection against the endless night. In the bustling markets of Babylon, merchants whispered of a spirit who could bend fate itself, not with magic, but with the strength to choose. The flame was no longer just Callista. It was a seed planted in the souls of those who refused to bow. Empires rose and fell, like waves against the shore. Callista's flame lived in the heart of a young queen who led her people against tyranny, wielding not sword but words that stirred rebellion. It blazed in the eyes of a poet, imprisoned for dreaming of freedom in a land ruled by iron and fear. It burned quietly in the workshop of a blacksmith who forged chains not to bind, but to break. And in the shadows, the gods watched, powerless to extinguish what was born of mortal will. Darkness came, as it always does. Wars scarred the land. Fear whispered in the streets. The flame flickered, almost extinguished. But even in the blackest nights, Callista's fire endured. A humble healer used her touch to save children from plague. A hidden scholar kept ancient knowledge alive, teaching in secret the power of choice and thought. A silent singer's voice rose from prison walls, carrying hope like a beacon in the cold. The flame grew brighter with every act of courage. The world changed. Again, iron beasts roared on steel tracks. Voices flew on invisible waves. The sky filled with lights, not from stars, but from cities. Still, the flame passed on in the heart of a restless child, curious about the stars, in the hands of a scientist daring to question the universe, in the eyes of a wanderer searching for meaning in a digital age. Callista's flame was everywhere, timeless, eternal, and alive. This story never ends, for as long as there is breath in a mortal's lungs and fire in a mortal's heart. Callista's journey continues, sometimes as a whisper, sometimes as a roar. She walks in the footsteps of all who dare to choose their own fate. The battle between gods and mortals was never truly won or lost. It simply became a dance in eternal flame, burning bright in the soul of humanity. Callista's flame was no ordinary light. It was a living force that transcended the limits of mortal existence and divine decree. It traveled unseen, carried in the hearts of those who dared to dream beyond the chains of fate. In every era, in every corner of the world, her spirit awakened new heroes, ignited new rebellions, and breathed courage into the silent and the forgotten. In ancient lands, where deserts stretched endlessly beneath scorching suns, a young girl named Nephira found herself drawn to a strange warmth in the ruins of a forgotten temple. There, whispered voices told her stories of a woman who refused to bow to gods or kings. As Nephira traced the worn carvings on the stone, the flame of Callista stirred within her soul. She would become a healer and a rebel, mending bodies and breaking tyrannies, proving that the spark of defiance can never be snuffed. Far to the north, where the icy winds screamed, an inexplicable fire in his chest as the aurora painted the sky. It was the same eternal flame guiding him through endless darkness, compelling him to unite scattered tribes against an invading force that threatened to crush their freedom. His courage echoed Callista's own refusal to be bound by fate, a beacon for all who would choose to rise. Through centuries of kings and conquerors, poets and prophets, Callista's flame found its way into the hands of a scholar who risked everything to write forbidden truths, and into the voice of a young woman whose songs sparked revolutions across continents. Each carried a piece of the flame, a shard of the eternal fire that neither gods nor men could fully claim. When the world plunged into shadow and chaos, when despair threatened to smother hope, the flame flickered but never died. It hid in the quiet prayers of mothers, in the secret meetings of rebels, in the brushstrokes of painters who captured the indomitable human spirit on canvas. It was the light in the storm, the promise of dawn after the longest night, as time unfurled into the age of machines and steel. When cities rose like glass mountains and voices traveled faster than the eye could follow, Callista's flame found new vessels. A scientist who dared to challenge accepted truths, a young coder creating worlds in the digital ether, a teacher lighting minds in classrooms forgotten by power. Each carried the same timeless fire. It became a symbol not of divine power, but of human will and imagination. And so Callista's story flows endlessly, weaving through the tapestry of history, a never-ending melody of courage, choice, and change. Her flame is not confined to myth or memory. It burns in every act of kindness, every stand against injustice, every dream whispered into the night. Because the greatest power is not that of gods, but of those who choose to be free. The flame of Callista will forever dance in the hearts of all who dare to live on their own terms, an eternal, unquenchable light, lighting the path through every age, every story, every soul. And as long as one voice rises in defiance, one hand reaches out in compassion, and one heart beats with hope, the journey continues, never ending, forever bright. Callista's flame did not simply glow in moments of rebellion or courage. It lived, breathed, and evolved alongside humanity itself. Through endless cycles of hope and despair, it became a silent companion to every soul who dared to step beyond fear and expectation. The flame was a whisper in the roaring crowds of revolution, a quiet light in the darkest cells of imprisonment, and a spark igniting the hearts of those who chose love over hate, freedom over submission. In the ancient city of Athens, during the golden age of philosophy, a young thinker named Lysandra found herself tormented by the constraints of tradition. She dreamed of a world where minds were free, where the soul was not shackled by superstition or decree. One night, under a sky swirling with stars, Callista's flame descended like a gentle breeze, stirring a fierce determination in her heart. Lysandra would become a voice that challenged emperors and inspired generations to seek truth beyond blind faith. Centuries later, in the mist-covered hills of medieval Europe, a humble blacksmith named Tomas felt an unexplainable strength as he forged his tools. The flame kindled inside him a rebellious spirit that would eventually fan the fires of justice as he secretly aided those oppressed by tyrannical rulers. His life became a testament to the power of small acts of courage, building into revolutions that would reshape nations. As the world surged into the modern age, with steel giants piercing the skies and voices carried across invisible networks, Callista's flame took new shapes. It dwelled in the hands of inventors, crafting devices to connect distant souls, in the hearts of activists demanding equality and peace, and in the dreams of artists painting a future unbound by yesterday's chains. No longer confined to legend, the flame became a living, breathing force for change, pulsing in every beat of humanity's collective heart. The gods who once warred over Callista's affection watched from their distant thrones as their own power waned, overshadowed by the rising tide of mortal will. They realized that true divinity did not belong solely to the immortal, but to every being who claimed their right to choose, to love, to fight, and to dream. And so, the story of Callista lives on never-ending, ever-evolving, woven into the endless tapestry of human history. It is a song sung by every rebel, whispered by every dreamer, and carried in the pulse of every heartbeat that dares to defy. The eternal flame burns bright, lighting the path forward for all who seek freedom, for all who believe in the power of their own will, for all who carry the courage to write their own destiny. And in that endless journey, Callista is forever with us, a beacon that guides the eternal dance between gods and mortals, power and choice, fate and freedom. Her story is our story, and it will never end. Callista's flame wove itself into the very fabric of human existence, shaping destinies across continents and epochs. It whispered to the first storytellers beneath starlit skies, inspiring epics that would echo through millennia. It danced in the footsteps of explorers who dared to cross unknown seas, guiding them toward horizons unseen and truths unspoken. In the heart of the Renaissance, where art and science blossomed in fiery brilliance, Callista's spirit stirred the soul of a young painter named Isabella. Her brush captured not just colors, but the fierce yearning for freedom that had long been suppressed by dogma and fear. Through her canvases, the flame sparked awakening in minds bound by tradition, igniting revolutions of thought that reshaped the world. Through revolutions and wars, peace and turmoil, the flame endured. It glowed in the whispered prayers of those oppressed, flickered in the joyous laughter of children born into hope, and burned fiercely in the eyes of those who refused to surrender their dreams. From the ashes of fallen empires to the dawn of new nations, Callista's flame was the silent force pushing humanity toward its endless quest for liberty. As technology shrank the world, the flame found new homes in the quiet determination of a coder crafting worlds in lines of light, in the passionate speeches of activists rallying for justice, and in the silent sacrifices of countless souls striving for a better tomorrow. It transformed, adapted, yet never diminished, an eternal spark lighting the path through chaos and change. The gods, once rulers of fate and fortune, watched as their domains faded beneath the rising tide of mortal will. They saw that true power resided not in eternal crowns or thunderbolts, but in the hearts of those who dared to dream, to choose, to change. And so, the story of Callista continues endless as the stars, timeless as the human spirit, and bright as the flame that forever burns within us all. Her journey is our journey. Her flame is our fire. And as long as there is life, the tale will go on forever, unfolding, forever inspiring, forever alive. Callista's flame, an eternal beacon, drifted through the ages like a restless wind, unbound by time or place. It stirred the hearts of countless souls who found themselves at the crossroads of choice and destiny. It was the fire behind the whispered legends of shamans in faraway jungles, the spark igniting the resolve of freedom fighters in distant lands, and the silent courage fueling the resolve of those who stood alone against impossible odds. In the shadowed valleys of ancient China, a young scholar named Mei Ling discovered the flame not in a divine apparition but in her own insatiable thirst for knowledge and justice. Guided by the stories passed down through generations, she cultivated the flame into a roaring blaze that challenged emperors and inspired poets, forever intertwining her fate with the eternal story of Callista. Across the vast Sahara, A caravan leader named Idris felt the flame's pulse as he led his people through the unforgiving desert, teaching them to rise above despair with the power of hope and unity. His journey became legend, a testament to the undying light that burns within those who choose to defy darkness. As centuries turned to decades and decades to years, the flame crossed oceans and crossed minds. It found refuge in the hearts of artists who dared to paint dreams on blank canvases, in the voices of singers who gave melody to the struggles of the unheard, and in the hands of those who dared to build bridges where walls once stood. Even as the modern world spun faster, dazzled by technology and progress, Callista's flame remained a quiet, steady glow beneath the chaos, a reminder that true power is born from choice, courage, and compassion. The gods, once consumed by their own pride and rivalry, now watched in awe. They understood that immortality was not the dominion of divine beings alone, but the legacy of every mortal who claimed their right to shape their own fate. And so, the legend of Callista marches onward, woven into every heart that dares to dream, and every soul brave enough to live freely. The flame will never die. It is the eternal promise of hope, the unyielding spirit of freedom, the infinite journey of humanity itself. Her story, our story, continues without end, an endless flame lighting the path through every shadow and into every dawn. And so, the eternal flame of Callista reached beyond the limits of mortal time and divine realms. It became more than a story. It became a living force, an everlasting call to every heart willing to choose freedom over fear, truth over silence, and courage over submission. In a world forever changing, where empires rise and fall, where new gods may one day take their place, one thing remains certain: as long as a single soul dares to stand tall and speak their truth, Callista's flame will burn bright. Her legacy is woven into the very essence of life, a never-ending dance between fate and free will, shadow and light, gods and mortals. And when the stars themselves finally fade into the vast unknown, the flame will still whisper in the hearts of those who listen, reminding all who live, love, and fight that the greatest power lies not in immortality, but in the courage to be truly alive. For Callista's story is not just a tale of gods and mortals. It is the story of every one of us, an endless flame, an eternal journey, a boundless freedom.